Kari Lake's case moves forward. It was stalled a little bit in the Arizona Supreme Court, but we got a new order that's going to be sending it back down to the Superior Court for further proceedings. We have some background from Just the News, which had the opinion. On Thursday, the Arizona Supreme Court ordered court proceedings to take place soon. Kari Lake was the Arizona gubernatorial nominee. She lost by just 17,000 votes. She's suing Katie Hobbs. The case was reviewed by the Arizona Supreme Court in March, and if you remember, we covered this opinion. It remanded one of her 7 counts back down to the trial court. So this was housed up at Arizona Supreme Court. We were waiting on some rulings, and now we got it. This remanded the count back down, and the one count was about signature verifications. And so with that background, let's take a look at the actual order. In their responses to the petition that came from Lake to review the records, the court had already entered its order affirming the Court of Appeals on most issues, meaning Kari Lake loses most things, but then reversing those courts on their dismissal of the signature verification claim and remanding that issue back down to the trial court. So we were then sort of in this pause moment. The court says, on the issue of whether votes were improperly added by a third-party vendor, Runbeck, or another entity that was shoving ballots in somewhere here in Arizona, we stated that the record does not reflect that the unaccounted ballots were added to the count total, these 35,000 ballots. We instructed the parties to address as the basis for sanctions only Kari Lake's factual claims in her petition for review. The parties filed briefs, Lake filed a motion, and here we are. The court says candidates are free to timely challenge election procedures and the results, and the public has a strong interest in ensuring the integrity of the elections, of course. Sometimes campaigns and their attendant hyperbole spill over into these legal challenges, but once a contest enters the courts, the rules of attorney ethics apply. And although we must ensure that legal sanctions are never wielded against candidates or their attorneys acting in good faith, we also must diligently enforce the rules of ethics on which public confidence in our system depends. Says the Arizona rules authorize a court of appeals to impose sanctions on an attorney in certain cases, in particular when there are frivolous filings. Other rules apply as well. They say that other claims are sanctionable if they are brought without substantial justification. Remember that Katie Hobbs and the Arizona team, they're asking for sanctions against Kari Lake. They want her penalized and punished. They don't want her to ever bring a challenge or anybody to ever challenge him ever again. And so the court is giving us some background on what the rules say in regards to sanctions. It says the rules does give the appellate court broad authority to impose sanctions that are appropriate under the circumstances. And now we apply it to Miss Lake. In her complaint, Kari Lake set forth colorable claims, including ballot chain of custody claims that were rejected following an evidentiary hearing in trial court, which we covered at length here. And she duly, but unsuccessfully, except for the signature issue, challenged those rulings on appeal. However, Kari Lake has repeatedly asserted that it is an undisputed fact, undisputed in quote, that 35,000 ballots were added or injected at Runbeck, the third-party vendor. Not only is that allegation strongly disputed by the other parties, but this court concluded and expressly stated it wasn't supported by the record, and nothing in Lake's motion for leave revisits that issue. Thus, asserting that it is undisputed is false, but Lake continues to make the argument. The court says Lake's petition for review stated that it was undisputed that they were added. And in her opposition, Kari Lake filed a response, "Don't sanction me. My claims were valid." She repeats this contention. She said it again in her motion defending herself. She said the record indisputably reflects at least 35,000 election day early ballots for which there is no record of delivery to Runbeck were added at Runbeck. Kari Lake says, I'm doubling down on it. As the Court of Appeals observed, Lake's argument was focused only on one exhibit that included an estimate of the number of early ballot packets based on the number of trays in the different exhibits showing a precise count. Although Lake may have permissibly argued that an inference could be made that some ballots were added, there is no evidence that 35,563 ballots were. And more to the point, this was certainly disputed by the respondent. The representation that this was undisputed, accordingly, is therefore unequivocally false. And therefore, because Lake's attorney made false factual statements to the court, we conclude that the extraordinary remedy of a sanction is appropriate. against Kari Lake. Governor and the secretary seek sanctions for attorney's fees, and the secretary wants additional sanctions, all because they said undisputed. Because Lake prevailed in her argument that the trial court improperly found her signature verification argument was barred by laches, an additional sanction is not warranted, however. Therefore, it is ordered denying the motion for leave. It is further ordered denying Secretary Hobbs's motion to strike, and it is further ordered granting the motion for sanctions for stating that it was undisputed. That's unethical. And for repeating the false assertions in the additional filings. And therefore, counsel for Kari Lake is directed to pay the Supreme Court $2,000 as a sanction for this conduct, illegal, unethical words. Such payment to be made not later than 10 days from the date of this order. It is further ordered that failure to pay timely and to comply with this order may result in the termination of the pro hoc vice status, which means you can't practice here in Arizona, and other sanctions as appropriate. It is ordered denying the request for attorney's fees, which is good. And it's further ordered that the trial court shall be forthwith, here you go, the lower level superior court shall forthwith conduct such proceedings as appropriate to resolve the unrelated question previously remanded, directing the clerk of the court to enter the mandate and send it back down to the superior court to get this case back on track. So it's, it's a sanction. It's $2,000. That sucks. And it's a ruling, undisputed. Okay, it was disputed. They re-litigated it in their secondary filing and their opposition. I think they dodged a bigger sanction just simply because of the fact that they won the signature verification count. You can see in this language here, they wanted much bigger sanctions. $2,000 relative to Katie Hobbs's attorney's fees is nothing. If the judge would have said that he had to pay attorney's fees as well for Kari Lake to pay the attorney's fees for this whole challenge, it would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars versus $2,000. Okay. Now, if they would have lost all of the counts right here, they say they want additional sanctions for even bringing this case. The judge says, probably could, but Kari Lake won one of those counts. So I really can't hit her for all of the additional penalties. So good news, actually, I think, for Kari Lake. Yes, it's a penalty. It's a sanction. It's $2,000. But that sanction will be paid and should be resolved. The bigger news is that this is now opened up. It's going back down to the Superior Court. And so we get to see what the Superior Court does with this issue about signature verifications, which we will, of course, continue to follow and see what they do with this and where this goes. Of course, thank you for subscribing and joining us as we cover it.